Welcome, travelers, to episode 10. Is it 10 already?
I think it's 11. Number 11?
Technically 11, but it's 10 because the first one was 0.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
right.
welcome to the Time Travel Trio podcast. I am Jen.
And I am Matt.
And I'm Hyde.
And today is Hyde's Choice. What'd you pick for us?
I chose the film Looper, which came out in 2012, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Bruce Willis, and Paul Dano.
And Emily Blunt.
And Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt. How did I forget Emily Blunt? No. And a bunch of other people. Jeff Bridges is in it. It's a sci-fi action film. Takes place in the hotbed of sci-fi movie locations, Kansas City.
Yeah, right?
I have to say, points for originality on that. I would have never thought. Is this sci-fi episode going to take place in? Kansas City. All right.
Yeah.
In
It
the
didn't
future.
even need to be a place. You know what I mean?
It didn't need to be anywhere. And it's
Future
like
Kansas City.
future Kansas City, which looks like early 2000s.
Right,
Yeah.
with some minor tweaks.
Right. It takes 30 years for Kansas City to catch up with where we are now.
Yeah.
Um,
And then it quickly turns into the ghetto.
yes, it really does. I was like, man, Kansas City sucks in the future.
Yeah. So the basic synopsis: in 2074, when the mob wants to get rid of someone, the target is sent to the past, where a hired gun awaits someone like Joe, who one day learns the mob wants to close the loop by sending back Joe's future self for assassination. So there you go, intrigue.
It was
Yes.
directed by Ryan Johnson. Yeah, Ryan.
All right, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Ryan Johnson, he wrote and directed it. He's also going to be writing and directing, or at least co-writing, Star Wars Episode 8.
Yes.
Which started filming.
Yeah, just
Just
the other
recently,
day.
yeah.
He showed a little clip, and I was like, oh, please, God, I can't do 2 years of everyone breaking down every single little thing in Star Wars
Yeah.
Episode 8.
Just shoot your movie and then let us
Don't-
know when the trailer's out.
Please don't show us anything else.
Yeah.
I'll watch like one or two trailers maybe, and then I'll just wait for the movie to come out.
Yeah, which is a long time from now.
But this is one of the big ways he got his start. And actually, before this, Ryan and Joseph Gordon-Levitt worked together on a film I really enjoyed called Brick. So I was very excited to see Looper. I saw it the opening day, which is my link to this movie. I saw it opening day. I saw it in the Malibu Theater back when I was at Pepperdine University. My first impression of it was, wow, this could have been the new Blade Runner. And they totally messed it up.
Yes.
Or not totally, but
Yeah.
there's the script really. I think Ryan does a great job directing, like making this atmosphere of a world,
Yeah.
and the script that he wrote. Sorry, Ryan, you're a cool dude. I really like Brick. I really like a lot of your work, but I think you should have had someone else at least co-writing this movie with you.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. What's your history?
Yeah, I saw this. I was working at Sony when it came out, and I think there was either a pre-screening for it or the week it came out, there's a screening for it. So I saw it when it came out, either the week of or something like that. I didn't really know what to expect, so I was surprised when I first saw it. And I enjoyed it. Watching it again, I enjoyed it less because I knew what to expect. It seemed slower, so it was less enjoyable. But, I mean, I still think it's interesting, at least for the podcast. I don't own it, and I don't know if I ever will, but, the first time I saw it, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I must have seen this in theaters. I don't really remember it, but it seems like the kind of movie that I would want to go see. I did buy it. Hadn't watched it in a while, but I had seen it probably at least twice, I would say, before this. But yeah, it really drags, especially towards the end.
Walking Dead Season 2.
Boring movie, honestly. There's very limited suspense or even intrigue. Like, I don't, anyway, we'll get into it. But, so we've all seen it before, and now we will get into it with the trailer.
Time travel has not yet been invented, but 30 years from now, it will have been. I am one of many specialized assassins in our present called loopers. So when criminal organizations in the future need someone gone, they zap him back to me, and I eliminate the target from the future.
la la.
Loopers are well paid. We live the good life. And the only rule is never let your target escape. Even if your target is you.
I'm gonna fix this! I'm gonna find him! I'm gonna kill him!
This time travel crap just fries your brain like an egg.
That shot of him shooting the ceiling at the end is such a trailer shot.
Trailer shot.
Even in the movie, you're like, why is this in here?
Right. He was like, put that in the trailer. Look good. Joseph Gordon-Levitt looking cool.
Yeah, that trailer, I mean, it's not a bad trailer,
No.
but it's also, I don't know, for some reason I feel like it's a little bit deceiving in
Yeah.
a way. You think it, I mean, I guess it is an action movie, but after a while, the action really slows down.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I liked it. I did like it because at first you see, like, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's perspective, like when he's being chased after Bruce Willis gets away, it's like his perspective of it. It's like up close, it's frantic, and when Bruce Willis sees it, you see it again. It's far away, and it's more normal, I guess.
It's like not as dramatic.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
like the first time you see Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he gets knocked out, and then like you see it again from Bruce
Right.
Willis. It's like it's like a wide shot.
Right.
And Bruce Willis just walks up and punches him in the face, and it's kind of like quiet and
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I liked that comparison.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny, but I felt like the narration, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's narration, was clunky and like lazy storytelling a little bit, of very much like giving a lot of background. And I understand that maybe part of it was confusing to just show,
Right.
but I felt like I would rather discover this through your actions or through whatever you're doing instead of hearing you spend the first 20 minutes of the movie explaining what's a looper, what's closing your loop, what's doing this, who's this guy,
Right.
you know, like whatever Jeff what's his
Daniels.
face, Jeff Daniels' character, I don't remember his name in this movie, but it's like, you know, he is from the future, he runs this town and any other town if he cared enough about, you know, it like
Right.
felt too much like it was trying to be a noir movie a little bit.
Right. Well, the
Oh,
problem
yeah.
is if you want to be a noir movie, you have to commit.
And you have to do it the entire time, not just
Yeah.
the first 20 minutes to save yourself from writing more dialogue to
Yeah.
explain.
Exactly. That's my big thing about voiceover narrations. If you're going to do a voiceover narration, it has to either be very quick at the beginning of the movie. And when I say very quick, I mean a minute or less. And then maybe a minute or less at the end. And then, or you have to go the complete opposite direction and you have to have narration throughout.
Yeah.
And the problem is, around the second act of this movie, they had completely abandoned the film noir genre and stylings and narration to serve the story because it becomes more of an action film towards the bottom end of the second act. So it's very hard. You know, again, like I said, I think Rian Johnson directs this movie well. Like the scene you're talking about where it shows, like, that's a great example of why he's a good director.
yeah, there's some great
Yeah.
shots.
But I think the problem with the danger of being a director and a writer of your same movie without either a producer who's going to cut back things or another writer who's going to basically say, this is too self-indulgent or this is not going to work, you end up with scripts that aren't... This seems like a script that needed about one or two more decent rewrites.
Yeah.
And then it could have really been a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a pretty long movie, and it takes its time a lot. Like, there's some scenes where there's no talking, or it's kind of not really, I don't know. There's a lot of pauses in the movie,
Yes.
especially on the farm.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a good example of narration, but you know who does it really well is Veronica Mars. That show does narration very well because she's very quick and she has a lot of quips and stuff, and it's consistent, but it's not too much.
Right.
And she does explain things like, you know, my best friend really died, which is in the first episode. But, you know, and this, it was too, like, we didn't know Joseph Gordon-Levitt yet, and he's not, his voice is a little bit monotone sometimes.
Yeah, he's
was-
literally Bruce Willis impersonation.
Yeah, but
Right.
it was like
Right.
not. I really didn't care for that. And then, I mean, once it was gone, I was glad it was gone, and I didn't miss it. But I think it would have better served the movie to have shown us. I mean, you didn't really even need to explain closing the loop, because we got that when Paul Dano's character dealt
Right.
with his stuff, because that's exactly what happened to him. And you easily could have just waited and then let us learn from that instead of explaining it and then we see it happen.
Right, like one's a Paul Dano's character, he doesn't close the loop, or you see someone else's character who closed the loop at the beginning of the film, and they said, "Oh, you just closed your loop." Like he successfully closed. Like when they showed a little montage of the guy who actually did close the loop. It's like maybe show like a montage of him being like, "Yeah, yeah, here's your silver, blah blah blah." Like enjoy the next like 40 years.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Which is something that I didn't like about that trailer too, is that he says we get paid really well. They clearly do not get paid very well. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stashes half of his money instead of turning it in
right,
because they don't get paid
right,
enough
and he
to live on.
and he even alludes to the fact that when they show, because in this movie, hopefully everyone who's listening to this wants the movie at this point, but if you're in the movie, they show that there's two possible timelines that can happen. Because at one point they trick you and they show you Joseph Gordon-Levitt shooting Bruce Willis, older Joe, and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt grows up, he goes to Shanghai, he blows all of his money pretty quickly. I mean, I think
drugs
like over the course of
China.
5 or like 7 years, he's already broke.
Yeah.
And he
Reverse back to crime, I think, right?
Yeah, he goes
Yeah.
a hitman again.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
The shot of when it's like him and he
Bruce-
gets older by his hair getting longer,
Bruce
which is just
Willis-
weird. And then all of a sudden it's Bruce Willis with that
the
hair.
hair.
And it's
Yeah, and it's like, why?
the dumbest thing.
That was really creepy.
Like, we're not gonna buy that they actually really look alike, but we're buying it for the sake of the movie. You don't
Right.
need to like shove it down our throats.
I think-
leave it be.
I think it's most creepy because it looks like Bruce Willis's character holds on to his hair even after he's balding that much. Like, it's bald in the middle and he has long on the sides, or it looks really weird
It's
because he's
weird,
like
yeah. it's
balding
not-
but also long hair. It just looks really weird.
Luckily,
Yeah.
it doesn't last long.
No, it doesn't
It's-
last.
it's just
just
one shot.
That one shot is horrifying. You're like, did you wake up like that? And it was like, yeah, this is okay.
Gross.
Yeah.
It was gross like that before he turned into Bruce Willis, that he let his hair get like that too.
Right, and I know a lot of people make fun of the prosthetics, but I think the prosthetics on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's nose that
Yeah.
look like Bruce Willis are very convincing.
I like that.
But
Yeah.
the whole hair thing is like, why?
I mean, like, yeah, seeing that little, like, so we see that scene after Bruce Willis. We see him we see Joseph Gordon-Levitt fail to kill him the first time. Joseph Gordon-Levitt falls off a building. He's trying to like run away from the bad guys, and then it cuts to him killing.
Yeah, you
His older self
see
again.
as if you would see what his life would have been if he had killed.
Right.
Which
His older
actually
self.
is Bruce Willis's life that he
Yeah.
lived.
Right.
Mhm.
And then it cuts back to the present day with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's characters failing to kill himself in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting concept. I mean, like that trailer got me to see the film,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some plot holes like all time travel movies. I mean, it's like that's a genre that you just have to accept. There's going to be some logical fallacies,
Yeah.
but it is an interesting thought, like just this idea that like you would work for a company that you know is eventually the part of the contract is for some reason. When you get too old, like Logan's Run style, they're going to send you back to the past and you're going to get killed. And it's like, I don't know if there's any job that could really be that. I mean, clearly, like, they don't get paid even that well. First of all, you live in Kansas City, so it can't be like you're that rich. Two, what? Like, is it really worth it?
The weirdest. Okay, one of my questions about that was,
Mm-hmm.
do they not investigate all of these missing people from the future? Like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of loopers. That's a lot of people. Even Joseph Gordon-Levitt alone probably does 5 a week,
Right.
I would
Well,
say. And so what happens in the future? I mean, I get it. We don't really see that much of, like, older future. But that's a lot of people to just go missing and
Well-
not wonder what all these crime bosses, as
Right.
police just know.
And so,
Well, I mean, I think they do know, but it's in the past. So if it's outlawed, then the cops probably won't use it, but the bad guys do. So even if the cops do know that they're in the past, they can't do anything about it, I think.
Yeah, like how do you prove it?
Yeah, but actually
Yeah.
on that point of them working for the company, I think what's interesting is Jeff Daniels' character. He's from the future, so he knows things. But I think my understanding is that the Rainmaker, who's the bad guy from the future, who's the kid in the present, I think he's doing it out of vengeance. I think he's sending back the loopers,
Right.
like to
Yeah.
I think he's making the loops close because someone says he's closing all the loops like out of vengeance in the present day.
Because Bruce Willis killed his mom?
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's kind of. It's never really fully explained, but you know that something really messed up happened.
Yeah, I think in Bruce Willis's timeline, that's my question actually because
He does say that there was a bunch of like theories, I guess, about
Right.
why he was this bad guy.
like the kid's mom died. when
that
he was a
he
kid.
saw his mom get shot is one. He gives a bunch of examples, and that is one of them. He sees his mom get shot.
Right.
And I guess we kind of see, but not really. I mean, we see him angry as if she had gotten shot at the end, and then he jumps on that train, the little
Yeah.
boy, and he's all sad. But I'm
But-
just trying to think of his future.
Well,
why
yeah.
that
I mean,
purpose serves his revenge.
I think that like that is what will happen now if in that moment Joseph Gordon-Levitt doesn't kill himself. That's what he thinks will happen.
Right.
So he'll still be a Rainmaker and still it'll make the loop happen again. But my question is originally when in Bruce Willis's timeline when he killed his future self and he just lived about his life, the Rainmaker still happened. So does that mean Emily Blunt failed as a mom and the kid still went evil?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
That's because that's the question I was gonna. One of my questions I wrote.
Yeah.
It's like apparently because you can change the future according to this movie.
Yes.
So, but apparently it's kind of like the whole theory that like it takes a lot, like it takes a major shift because otherwise time will just correct itself. Like, no, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just enough to change the kid; you had to also change the mom at the same time. Like both of them have
Yeah.
to change in order
Yeah.
for the Rainmaker not to
I mean,
exist.
you definitely see Sid, the little boy, his name is Sid. You see Sid even open up a little bit more to have an older male figure in
Right.
his
No,
life.
that's true,
Like
yeah.
Emily Blunt is a good mom, but she's very protective, and he really
She's
responds to Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
I mean, I'd
really
be intimidated too.
responds to Joe and wants to help him, and you kind of see him open up a little bit more and even control his powers a little bit more.
Right.
So I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. And
That's
if it
true,
was
yeah.
just her, he probably would have, he's only, 9 or 10
Right.
in
Yeah.
this. When he's 16 and is, lashing out at his mom, he could probably kill her. Maybe
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what
Maybe
it
that's what
was,
does it. We don't.
Like what happened with his other mom.
And I think that's good that we never exactly know exactly what causes a Rainmaker to, because then it just causes too many questions. And plus, old Joe, in one of the more ridiculous plot points in the movie, though it makes sense, it's just the way it's executed is actually really ridiculous, is he pretty much takes out the entire Kansas City mob of Looper mob. He takes it out single-handedly, takes out
Yeah, that was
the whole...
really badass.
It really was. I mean, he just goes in and you just and you do buy it just because
It's Bruce Willis.
it's Bruce Willis. Like Bruce Willis, you're just like, all right, I buy it.
Yeah.
But it is just kind of clearly he's caused a huge ripple.
Yeah,
in
so
time.
my question is, at what point will he then vanish from the present if he messes with the past so much? Will he then not be sent back to the past in his, I don't know. I mean, I asked that to myself, but then I answered it by saying, well, maybe regardless of what he does to the mob, the Rainmaker will still happen and still send it back out of vengeance, maybe. But the question, if he messes with the present that much, it might mess with him being sent back originally.
Because, I don't know.
Well, I guess he'd just disappear in mid stride if that was happening.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't think that was really the point. I don't think he's trying to make a better present for himself. I think it honestly was a one-way trip for him.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was just
Because his wife is already dead, so he doesn't really care.
right. He's just I'm just gonna screw everyone. He basically goes mini Rainmaker on the past.
Yeah.
Well, he does, and they kind of show that at the very end. He says, a man who will do anything for his wife, a boy who will do anything because his mom died, a mom who will do anything for his son, and you kind
Right.
of see them all compared and why they're all, that's my favorite part of watching any movie really is why someone is the way that they are.
Right.
And this movie is interesting. I would have liked to have seen more of Sid and why he's so hell-bent on closing loops.
Right.
Because in his original timeline, like, what happened?
Mhm.
That, to me, is more interesting than Joseph Gordon-Levitt making out with Emily Blunt on a farm for half an hour.
And that was just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question though. So the first time we see Bruce Willis get captured and taken to the past through the little, or he fights and goes to the past, his wife doesn't get killed. He doesn't get shot. But then in the diner when he's talking to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I guess his memory changes and I guess it changes a little bit so that way he gets shot and she gets killed. Like is that because the first time we see him get captured, he just gives up and he gets captured. But the second time when he's like he
But
kind of has like
we
a
don't
little...
see no. I think they didn't show us everything the first time.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think the first time we just didn't know everything.
We don't
that
see anything of his wife. That doesn't necessarily mean that he changed.
Because remember, they
his
take him
voice.
to a new location. They burn down
That's
the
true,
house.
but in that memory, he gets shot, but originally he isn't shot.
Oh, but he gets shot by Emily Blunt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets shot by Emily
No,
Blunt.
I'm talking Bruce Willis, old Joe. When he first gets sent back to the past, he's not shot, but
He's not. They don't shoot him. They have like this taser gun,
it's a taser gun. Okay.
and it makes him fall to the floor, which could have happened after he put his
Okay.
hands up. That we just
Gotcha.
didn't see
Right.
what happened next.
Yeah.
Someone else probably went out to get his wife, and when he was on the floor, he looked over and she was
Okay.
being dragged. That's
yeah.
in my mind is what happened. That we just didn't see everything.
Yeah, I'd have to watch it again to be sure, but I think Jen is right.
Because they wouldn't want to show you all of his reasoning for why he's killing children, which,
Right.
boy, we need to get into that.
Whew.
But yeah.
Okay, yeah,
But,
that makes
yeah.
sense because I thought like maybe he changed it enough so that he still meets the girl, but now it's different in that she dies. But I buy that.
I just
Okay.
think that it's a storytelling choice
Gotcha.
to not show, because if we saw that his entire thing, why he was being dragged, whatever, it wouldn't have anything for us to show for him later.
Mm-hmm.
We would just know, and he would go on, and we would kind of not really care about him as
Right.
much. But when we see, wow, they took his wife, they're really taking it out on him, which to me says like, maybe Joe in those 30 years somehow interacted with the Rainmaker, because it does seem like it's kind of about him. Like they really are hellbent on him. He's not doing crime anymore at that point. Old Joe,
Right.
you know, he's living his life. He's being very quiet. He's like a reformed guy. So why? That was my big question. Was why now was the Rainmaker, you know,
Like,
closing loops? 30 years is a long time to wait to do that. When he's 10 till he's 40.
Right. That's a very good point. Actually, and that would have maybe been a stronger strand of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Is that while he's a hitman, when he's like in Shanghai, he does something that sets the Rainmaker off, or maybe while he's young Joe in Kansas City, he does something that like upsets the Rainmaker.
Or maybe he works for the Rainmaker. I mean, it doesn't really seem like the Rainmaker is like some superhero type of guy. He's like a bad... I mean, I kind of saw him as a mob boss. Like,
Right.
he's a negative person. So maybe Joe, when he went back to crime, when he was older and ran out of money, worked for him, wanted to get out or like left or what, you know, and maybe he's just like, nope, I'm
Right.
done with that. I'm just going to get rid of you, you know, stuff like that. I
No,
don't
it's
know.
true. I mean, they do say like, I mean,
Or he just hates loopers.
it's such a hard thing. Like, and you could have done it without showing the Rainmaker, because I know they wanted to kind of like keep him mysterious as possible. But it's like, because it is kind of like foreboding the first time you hear it, and they're like, yeah, he just took over like the mob business. Like, what do you mean? Like, he took over? Like, it's like, no, just single handedly took it over. And you're like, what? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So, like, why is he trying to change it, reform it, you know, erase it, etc.? So, I don't know. But that also leads to the question of time stream, I guess, for lack of a better word, in old Joe's future and then in the present young Joe, in 44 compared to 74. Are these days consistent? You know what I mean? Like, why did he wait so long in 74 to change 44?
Yeah.
It seemed like when the days in 74 happened, it was the same day in 44. Like the day that old Joe, that was my question. The day that old Joe went back to 44, is that the same day? Is it just like whatever day it is, and
Well,
they know what day to send it to? You know what I
the
mean?
movie does an interesting job of explaining, or rather avoiding explaining that question. There's a clip actually we have where old Joe and young Joe meet in actually a very cool way that we will probably talk about a little bit more. Young Joe basically scars into his arm.
Yeah, a
directly.
scar note.
A scar note
But-
for the future.
My issue with that note, which I think is really smart, but it was very misleading on purpose how they did
Right,
it, because
yes.
because Paul Dano's character, we see his older self trying to escape, about to escape, and then he sees this note on his arm that says "be at" and then an address, and young Joe writes on his arm Beatrix. But we see like "be at,"
Right.
and then I'm just like, that's such bullshit. Like, fuck you.
I thought it was exciting when it was like,
I mean,
snap!
it was suspenseful, but it was like suspense for the sake of suspense.
Right.
And it was kind of a cheap shot. But so here's the diner scene when Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis actually get to speak together.
Saw it staring into your eyes. It's too strange.
Your face looks backwards.
Yeah.
So do you know what's gonna happen? You done all this already? As me?
I don't want to talk about time travel. Because if we start talking about it, then we're going to be here all day talking about it, making diagrams with straws.
We both know how this has to go down. I can't let you walk away from this diner alive. This is my life now. I earned it. You had yours already. So why don't you do what old men do and
Why
die?
don't you just take your little gun out from between your legs and do it? Boy.
So I had an issue with how they're like, no, we don't want to talk about time travel, so we're not going to talk about time travel.
Yeah, literally that's what they say. The movie literally tells you,
Yeah.
I could explain this to you, but we're not going to.
It's
Yeah.
like with Jeff Daniels' character, he asks if he's going to kill Paul Dano from the future, and he's like, "No, we can't do that. It'll mess with things too much."
Mm-hmm.
But they go ahead and basically kill him by making him a legless, armless,
Right.
comatose person. So, like, what's the difference? He's basically dead.
Right.
You still change the future the same amount.
It's yeah, and that I'm trying to find. I think I had a note about that, but what happens to Seth Paul Dano when he stops the Rainmaker?
I see. That's a good question. Well, that's what I want to know because
Is he still dead?
technically, what should happen after Joseph Gordon-Levitt shoots himself is that everything should reset.
Yeah.
But nothing resets. Everything's still destroyed. The cars are still overturned. The fields are Emily Blunt and the Rainmaker remember everything that's happened. And so,
yeah,
if-
Bruce Willis's effects should have been wiped out because now
Because
Joseph
he
Gordon-Levitt's
didn't
dead.
exist. Yeah.
But I don't know. It's
but
kinda
then
weird.
again, Paul Dano's character, that's his choice. It has nothing to do with that means that Paul Dano's character sent back from the loop has nothing to do with the Rainmaker.
So was young Paul Dano like with those destroyed limbs and fingers and whatever gone for 30 years?
That's the interesting thing about the implications. I guess the way the time travel thing works, it's almost like changing a Word document almost. I know that sounds like a weird way of putting it,
Yeah.
but it's like things, it's like, okay, you took out these sentences, so it now operates like it doesn't have a hand anymore, it doesn't have an arm anymore, but it's assuming, I guess somehow time is assuming, if we're making time like a character, or like some sort of force, time is assuming that you survived it somehow. So
Yeah.
it just gets rid of things as is. It's like, well, it's almost like you changing something. It's like, oh, well, apparently now we don't have any fingers.
Yeah.
But like,
So-
how did they know? I mean, my issue with like them cutting off both of his legs, like you did not know how far he was from this place. Like, let him walk and get there and like chill out. You know what I
Right,
mean?
like they're very brutal for like saying like come to this address, and then they're like very quick to like.
They do not give him enough time to,
Right.
and he was going there, you know. But okay, so when they're chasing Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and everyone and their mother is shooting at him, doesn't that go against exactly what Jeff Daniels said about consequences, about not shooting the younger one so
Right.
he can live, so that they can find the older one? Like, what the fuck?
It's totally Blake's, and it doesn't make sense that older Paul Dano, after like being let go, wouldn't just go on the run with younger Paul Dano. Why stay in Kansas City and like split up? You two should be going together. Like, yo, Like
Yeah,
we need
right.
like if we split up, we're both dead. If
Yeah.
we go together, we
He's
have a
also
chance.
not a super smart guy in the first place, and
That's
still
true.
technically is the same person.
I guess he just never got smart in the future either.
So
Yeah.
so I have a question. So Jeff Daniels is from the future. So does that mean when things change, he remembers it differently? Like, does he have like almost like a force sense where like,
Well, they do say that Bruce
Oh,
Willis,
things
like,
that-
he gets blurry. Like, his timelines get blurry. He's like, I
Right.
think that happened, or maybe it didn't happen, or maybe this is a new timeline, or maybe there's something new.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, must, I guess, but I actually did like that a lot about the movie. Is Bruce Willis's motivation changes over the course of the movie because he loses more of his memories, which is his life. So
Right.
he has less of a reason to care, and he gets more ruthless as he does in the movie because his life is now just being wiped away from his mind, like as it gets changed more
I did like that
to the
aspect,
point
too.
of killing kids and just
Gosh.
going on a rampage.
So I guess we should just talk about that. I don't even know where to start. So old Joe, in his mind, if he kills the Rainmaker when he's a young kid, it would fix his past and save his wife. That's his target
Right.
of
Right.
why he's there.
He would be back in bed with his wife.
Yeah, and
Happy.
he would wake up and everything would be fine. So he goes around. Some random guy in the future gave him the time and date, and he knew, I guess, where the Rainmaker was born,
Right.
or the county. So he goes on the computer and, which remind me, I want to talk about their cell phones, but he goes on the computer and there's 3 different kids who were also born
Born
at
in that
time.
day in that hospital. I think
At
the
that-
code is a
yeah.
hospital. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the date in the hospital code. And so he gets this map and he marks the 3 places where they live, I guess, and because you can just find that very easily in 2044.
Hey, and Freedom of Information Act, man.
Yeah. So he goes, when he and Joseph Gordon-Levitt are at the diner, Joseph Gordon-Levitt rips off a page of his map. Of course, he has the piece that has Emily Blunt's
Right.
house on it, obviously, because what else would happen?
It's a magic map at this point.
It is. Yeah, it really is. But so Bruce Willis goes around to kill the other 2 kids in the meantime in case it's them.
Right.
Because he doesn't know which one it is. We know because duh, it's a movie, but he doesn't know who, so he goes around. I don't know, and honestly I just don't know how to talk about this. He goes to some random kid's house. The little boy's at his door. He turns around. He sees Bruce Willis. It cuts to the street, and we hear a gunshot.
Right.
So, and then Bruce Willis feels guilty a little bit about it afterwards. He's like, but too little, too late, my friend.
Right.
You killed a 10-year-old child. Like,
Right. And it wasn't the
you
right
do not
kid
deserve.
either.
Yeah, and that's the worst part, was that it wasn't the right kid. Like, he closes his eyes and has the same memories of him and his wife in bed and whatever, but then he opens his eyes and he's still there. So it wasn't the right kid.
Right. But that also plays into, like, Matt Form. No, I didn't say your whole name. That's weird. It's a weird thing. It's like, it's just because,
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's anyway to what Matt was talking about. And it was actually one of my favorite parts of the movie is that as he loses his memory, he becomes desensitized and he becomes more ruthless. Because, I mean, what makes you a person? It's your memories, it's your lessons you've learned. If you eventually learn, like, why don't you touch a hot stove? Because at one point in your life, you touched a hot stove and you're like, that hurts. So if you lose the experience of hot surfaces hurt, you're going to touch a hot surface and be like, oh, what is this new sensation?
But I still feel like even without memories, it still shouldn't be so cool to kill kids.
Yeah, I think it would have been a little bit more interesting.
If he was going to and then saw a flash of where Joseph Gordon-Levitt was, like, at that point.
Yeah,
like,
he should have remembered being at the farm at that point.
Yeah.
Right, like that would have been more interesting. Like, he's like, he doesn't want to do it. He's like struggling with it. Then he realizes.
Or he kidnaps the kid.
Right. And then he realizes, like, oh, okay, I need to kill Sid. That's the only kid. And he has enough stones to do that. He's like, I'm going to kill, it's just one kid, but it's the one kid who's going to do a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
But
kind
he kills that kid and then moves on to the second kid.
Yeah,
Right.
Although
Barabo's kid.
there's a moment when Joseph Gordon-Levitt sees Sid explode for the first time, and that's the moment when Bruce Willis knew.
Yeah, no, I know, but like
That's true. And that is really cool.
Yeah.
That should have happened at the same time. I'm saying because
Yeah,
I don't think
from a
that this movie
storytelling,
should have, and it didn't seem like, oh, this was such an important part of the story to watch him actually, or no, not watch him, but to know that he
Yeah,
actually
it's a
killed
little
the kid.
much. It is a little much.
It's a little
It's
much.
true,
I
yeah.
mean, luckily they don't do it twice because the second time he sees Piper Parabo's character, recognizes her, can't do it, and then goes back later and is like, I'm sorry, but then they catch him.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't have gone that far. I think it was
Yeah.
just kind of like,
it was too much.
it just makes it too much. And I know they're trying to make him so, like, he's like, you understand he has to die. Even, like, the old Joe has to die as well.
Mhm.
But I think actually it would have been a more interesting story if, like, you completely sympathize with old Joe. And, like, he's just, him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt have had two very different goals.
If he had been reformed, maybe not from being such a heavy drug addict, I would have felt a little bit more
Right, like if he was like,
sympathy
if
for
like
him.
yeah, old
like-
Joe comes back and he's just straight up, this guy's crazy.
But like, I just didn't really, he had been addicted to drugs for 30 plus because he's already addicted when we see him present day.
Right.
So I don't feel guilty for someone who lost his wife because she was nice enough to help you and you used to kill people for a living and you were addicted to drugs and
Right.
sex and whatever. I don't feel guilty for you. I don't feel sympathy for you. And you kill children. Like, there's nothing about him that I feel
Yeah, he doesn't,
any redeeming qualities.
doesn't even get a lot of he like, kind of erases his redeeming qualities once he kills the kid.
And young Joe, I mean, first of all, Paul Dano's character is kind of the worst. And doesn't really deserve Joe's help. And, like, I don't think that Joe helped him in the most effective
He doesn't
way.
really help. He sells him
He
out
doesn't
pretty
help him.
quick.
No,
He's
but,
like,
like-
he's in my house.
But, like,
Here's the
don't
combination.
put him in with your silver. Like, that was my thing, was like, if
Right.
you're going to choose a silver over your friend, fine, but they're both in the same place. What's stopping these bad guys from taking both?
Right. It's not really
You know
well
what I
thought
mean?
out.
And Paul Dano just should have ran. But there's a scene after that where he goes and sleeps with Piper Parabo, and he offers her half of his silver.
Right, because he
So
feels
I'm like,
guilty.
yeah, he feels guilty, but, like, what happened to doing that before?
Right.
They were going to take half of his silver and let his friend live.
I think Joe
Don't
I think
understand.
Joe clearly has a weakness for women, but like he doesn't seem to be a good friend either.
No.
No, that's for sure. He's just not a good person.
But yeah, no, because this is the interesting part. When I first saw this movie, particularly the first 20 minutes, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This is really strong.
Yeah,
And-
the world was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and then right around the part where I would say right around the part when the movie starts getting a little weird is right when they get to the diner and they have the fight and he grabs the map and all that jazz. And that to me is like when the movie starts getting weird because up to that point, nothing really happens because of like just dumb luck. Like, and I get it. Every movie, the main character usually gets at least one moment of like, wow, that character got really lucky. I mean, James Bond, good lord, gets lucky
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But like,
Literally.
In more ways than one.
more, and then, but in this one, him just grabbing the right thing and had miraculously the right house that leads to Emily Blunt is just a little too much for me to buy. Even in a movie with all this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, side note, once I realized that telekinesis was actually going to become important in the film, it really like went down a few notches because when I first see the opening, it's just like, oh, we have telekinesis. I thought it was just like a nice little like, hey, science is saying we're going to evolve. So what are we going to evolve to? Telekinesis. And it's just like a little, tiny little thing. There's a great video game series called Dead Space, which has the same theory about human evolution, that eventually with enhancers, with implants, people will be able to do some very light telekinesis.
Mm-hmm.
Just because our society will get to the point where it's like, we just need to be able to move these things and not have to use complete physical labor to do this.
Right.
And it's like, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
But even in a game like Dead Space, where you can literally use telekinesis to solve puzzles, it's like a very side thing. It's a very minor thing. It's like just a little caveat, accent or atmosphere to the story. Here, telekinesis like it shows up and someone's like floating, like they're like
It's
swirling.
quarters.
Yeah, quarters, and you're like, well, that's kind of cool, I guess. And then it becomes like the plot point of the movie. Telekinesis becomes more important than time travel in
Yeah.
some ways.
Well, because Emily Blunt's good at it, but her son is like the best at it, but he
Right.
can't control it at first. He just when he gets mad, he can kill people and make explosions and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
It just
Yeah.
seemed like such a weird thing to throw in, and I think the movie really like. There's already a lot of problems with like plot holes, but I really feel like once Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character gets to the farm, the plot collapses in on itself.
Yeah.
It's some good acting and even some good moments, but as far as like a cohesive story,
it slows down. A lot
yeah,
of pregnant pauses.
and we have a clip from like when he goes there and he has the map and things start to come together as far as like where this movie's actually headed.
Get off my farm.
You couldn't scare a retarded hobo with that thing, literally.
This is a Remington 870.
Yeah, that's telling. You're holding a gun. I say I'm not afraid, so you describe the gun to me. It's not the gun I'm not afraid of. What are you gonna do? Shoot in the air? Try to scare me? Go ahead. You wouldn't let me die. You're not gonna kill me.
Oh, so now I saved your life? That makes me weak?
Look, I'm not a threat to you or your boy. I need to be on your property. I'd rather there's no contact at all. I'm gonna stay in the fields. There's just one thing I need you to do, and you'll never have to deal with me again. Just verify for me this is your house on the map, so I know I'm in the right place.
What's this?
It's a map.
Yeah, that's my house. Why is it marked?
Okay, doesn't matter. Look, I'm gonna be out of the barn in an hour.
This
The water-
number, how'd you get this?
That mean something to you? What? Hey, hey, hey!
So quick note about that number. She said it's her son's birthday. She marks out the line. It's like 7/15/39. If he's 10 and it's in 1940 or
No,
2044,
he's not 10. I just kind of said that. But
well, he looks like he's not 6 years old or 5 years old,
Right.
right?
I think she does say that he's 6 or 5 or something.
She probably does.
Okay,
I
all
honestly
right.
don't remember, to be honest.
I don't know.
That's those. Hopefully, you haven't been listening to the podcast this long and not have seen the movie. But she shoots him with actually rocks, like kind of like a low grade version of shooting someone with a beanbag, and it causes a scar, which Bruce Willis gets, and then Bruce Willis realizes, oh, wait, something's going on here, and that of course eventually leads to young Joe getting the memory of, oh my gosh, Sid is like the most powerful TK in the world, and that like triggers old Joe to be like, I'm going to this farm.
Yeah.
I love Emily Blunt. We talked about Edge of Tomorrow. This is actually my second time travel movie I've used that had selected that has Emily Blunt in it.
That's true, yeah.
So I'm a big Emily Blunt fan. I think she's miscast in this movie.
Who would you have rather seen?
I don't know, but I think the problem with Emily Blunt in this role is that maybe it's a mix of things. I just don't buy Emily Blunt and Joseph Gordon-Levitt having sexual tension amongst each other.
Yeah.
Tension?
Yeah,
There wasn't no tension.
there's no tension.
She was just in her room and was like, I want to get laid. She hits the frog and that's it really. There's
Yeah.
no real tension. It's just
There's no
convenience, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, I want to have sex. Even with someone like just want to sex with, there's something. There's like some energy. There's some chemistry. There's some rhythm in the air, and like, there's literally nothing between those two. Like, it feels like
I honestly think Emily Blunt and Bruce Willis probably would have had more chemistry.
right. I mean, I will give kudos to Ryan Johnson for it's not very often that you have the woman who's older get with the younger guy. So points
Yeah.
for that one. I like that, but I just felt like there was no need to put in the whole sex thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's really what it is. I think
Yeah,
it would have been a
it-
lot. It kind of cheapened her character.
The whole
Oh, for
thing,
sure.
the whole farm really dragged, and that even made it worse. Luckily, it's not a very long sex scene, which
No.
I did appreciate, because I was like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, it's this. Why is this even in the movie? You could totally skip that.
They could have bonded some other way.
It was
They could have
literally
connected
like
somehow.
just so that
Yeah.
he could be upstairs, walk down the stairs the next morning, and see that she's that the guy is there with a gun to her head.
Yeah,
I
which
don't know.
could have worked if he just was like,
Walked in the front door and said, or something.
right, maybe he sees like the truck of like Jesse, or the car of Jesse, and then he's like, oh crap, and he like goes in the house, and then she's like, I mean, there's so many other more creative ways that plot line could have been reached.
And how many times did Sid fall down the stairs and was perfectly fine? He fell down a lot of stairs and was perfectly fine.
He's a TK. He's got stronger bones.
Sure, yeah, he can lift his bones and move them around, I suppose.
The third act in this movie it brings up so many problems. I had to give this credit to Movie Sins because they actually pointed it out. At the beginning of the movie, when Bruce Willis knocks Joseph Gordon-Levitt out, it's shown that the gun is like a one fire, and then like you have to really do all this like stuff to like get it to go again. Mm-hmm. When Joseph Gordon-Levitt faces off with we need to insert an antagonist villain, Kid Blue, who should be just named either Kid or Blue. Kid Blue is I used to think until I watched this again that his name was Little Boy Blue for some reason.
I had no idea that was his name, honestly. Kid Blue mean nothing to me until you just explained.
This Kid
Blue.
This Kid Blue, yeah. I'm like, what? Who is this guy? When he fights Kid Blue, which is actually a pretty decent fight scene, I must say. But he's able to fire the gun like a semi-automatic. Like, it's not like a one shot.
Like 6 times?
Yeah, I'm like, how many shots does this gun have? Like, the movie made a point of showing that the gun is a shotgun.
Yeah.
And then they totally renege on that rule for the fight.
I got a note about that scene, too, is you can't pick and choose whose bullets matter and whose don't just for a pointless scene.
Yeah.
There was a lot of laziness with some of the storytelling that I felt was kind of contributed to us unanimously not loving this movie as much as it easily could have been a great movie.
Yeah.
So
hopefully, I mean, again, I like Rian Johnson as a director. Hopefully, someone at Disney is keeping a close eye on the script that he's writing for episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure someone is.
I hope so.
A lot more money at stake with that one.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about...
He's done some great movies, The Brothers Bloom, Brick.
He did a few episodes of Breaking Bad.
He's a great director. He really is. Like
his directing was great, but like the writing is where I kind of have some issues. Yeah. So, I don't know.
I wanted to talk about the time travel, the machine, the vehicle by which they time travel.
I don't know if either of you guys actually saw Deja Vu, but it's very, very similar.
I was just going to say, it's very similar to Deja Vu.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest thing scientifically is a wormhole, but the problem with that is it takes way too much energy. And you can't just choose a point in the past to go through a wormhole.
Right, he's spending time in space.
Yeah, you have to, in order to actually do the wormhole properly, you have to set up a start and an end at the same time, and then move one end to the future by making it go faster, with relativity, and then you can go to the past through the wormhole. You can't just say, you're in a box, energy, and now you're in the past somewhere that you choose.
That, to me, is more of a teleporter through time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's way more of a teleporter than it is actual...
Like, where are the other people getting their loopers that they are supposed to kill? Or their other,
Right, because it's not like Kansas City's like the hub of, like, mob time travel.
And even other people in Kansas City, like, do they all go to that same spot where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is? And
no, they all have... We see, like, a different alleyway for some of
that's
them.
true.
Right.
Paul Dano is in that alley. But, like, people don't ever see any of these dozens of idiots carrying around bodies and burning them, and no one ever sees that.
Well, they do put their guns, which I actually think is kind of clever. They put their guns in a little box at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But, like, they still have to carry these bodies, and then they burn them.
Yeah.
In the past. I mean, that's...
Right.
I mean, the idea was cool is that they have trackers, and so if they're dead somewhere, they'll know where they are. But, it's just kind of, I don't know.
It's lazy.
Like, the world building's cool, but when you actually think about it, it's logically, with science, it's like, eh.
Yeah. So the consequences of actually time traveling, it did seem like he had a headache, I think, at first.
That's just with, like, his whole mind.
But his mind, from his
memories
trying to remember things.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I have a question for you. It's called Looper, but it doesn't really act like a loop. I mean, what kind of timeline is this?
I guess because the end is a loop, technically. I mean,
I think the biggest loop is at the end when he sees that if the kid goes away, it'll still loop over with the Rainmaker, but the time travel with this, the timeline, I guess, it could be changed, kind of like Back to the Future. I assume there's only one timeline because Bruce Willis is getting his memories changed, so his timeline's being affected by it. So there's only one.
Right.
So, since we're talking about the end, was the path a circle? Like, was it the story path? Was it always a circle? Or, like, what was it the first timeline? I mean, we kind of talked about that, I guess, because Sid, still went evil. And we don't really know what truly happened. But now that he's changed things, does Sid no longer close the loops? And what happens to all those people that Bruce Willis killed in that, all the mob people, Jeff Daniels and whoever?
Yeah, I think I think ultimately at that point where Sid goes away and you kind of see the flashes of a potential future, I think he still would have been Rainmaker. He still would have sent the Loopers back, because I think in the future, 2074, that could very well just be Rainmaker having his own organization, closing the loops, not the same mob organization doing it. So in that sense, it could still happen that way with Bruce Willis being sent back in the past. So at that point, he still wouldn't disappear until he dies.
Right. It's not like he stopped all time travel crime. He just stopped the Rainmaker.
He just killed a bunch of people.
Right, but like Bruce Willis no longer killed all those people because he was never there. So are they alive now?
Yeah, but that's the plot hole now. Like the whole plot of the movie is Bruce Willis doing stuff. Mm-hmm. If now Joseph Gordon-Levitt's dead, then Bruce Willis will never come back to the past. So all that stuff with Sid and his mom will still happen, and he'll still be the Rainmaker because he'll still become a teenager that's evil.
So it reverts back to the original timeline that we don't know of. Then, right?
And just now Joe isn't. He just doesn't get old.
That doesn't mean that another Joe's not the only one who could ever have this information about this kid. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And time travel is still a thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. I think it would have been a much better ending than the let's cut out the music and do a flash to white and then just do. I mean, oh god, seriously, it's not that profound of an ending. I think what they could have done instead, which would have been very nice, is Emily Blunt and the kid go to sleep. And as soon as they go to sleep, everything resets. Because, they even tease that with Bruce Willis. That at one point he feels like he's back with his wife. Mm-hmm. So they could tease it and they could go back. She wakes up, doesn't remember anything. Everything's been reset. The day's now dead. Certain people are alive, certain people aren't. She could have been driving down the street and you could have seen Paul Dano's character walking around doing something. Mm-hmm. Any of that could have, just no Joe. Because all that would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, you made a new timeline. You made a new timeline where there's no Rainmaker, and Joe is this guy who's committed suicide somehow.
But I still think that there would be a Rainmaker.
Right, because in Bruce Willis's timeline, he didn't know anything about Sid or anything like that, and the Rainmaker still happened.
It still happened.
It's true.
So I think Joe being there helped Emily Blunt and Sid.
So it's a time paradox.
It's a huge
loop.
The
whole movie is a loop. It goes back to Bruce Willis's Joe's original timeline.
So does that mean that the Sid is still going to become the Rainmaker?
I don't know. I mean, it's a loop that forms a plot hole, I think.
Yeah, because Joe isn't the end-all be-all of loopers, so we just see him, but that doesn't mean, we don't know what's going on with all the other cities, all the other places. It kind of feels like the Time Machine. How, you eliminated some of the Morlocks, but there's still a bunch of other civilizations of them.
Right.
It just fixed your problem there at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't fix the world, so don't act like it fixed the world.
Right. It told a story, but
yeah.
consequences here, people.
Right.
So, I did want to talk about their tiny glass square cell phones. The most unreasonable thing I've ever seen. First of all, it breaks easily with a rock. There's no way that people who keep it in their pockets and stuff, you would sit on it and it would break. It would break in your pocket if you
maybe cell phones are super cheap in the future, $2 a cell phone.
But you know what I mean? It wasn't a cool thing. I can't wait till we get those types of cell phones. I don't ever want that type of cell phone.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
I didn't like the future.
They talk on it.
They have eye drugs. They have a laser metal detector that's pretty cool. It just saw the laser scans for metal. But the jet bikes, that wouldn't work. You can't just have a jet on the back of a bike and just go forward. It needs to
How do you hover?
I mean, like, you need magnets.
Yeah.
I guess they might have magnets, but they got on, a jet went, and they just went in a straight line. You can't just have a jet go, unless you're going, like, the speed of light. You can't just,
Yeah.
or, sorry, the speed of the Earth's rotation to go in a, like, whatever.
Right. No, I
The
feel
orbital
you.
speed.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just like, it'd be really cool, a fight scene where you have to shoot some guy on a hoverboard bike. Like, you're just kind of like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool.
So one of my questions was, why is it so bad if the loops escape?
I guess they could expose.
I mean, they have
their
knowledge of the
coordinates.
future,
Yeah, but like, what is, like, who? I don't know. In 2044, time travel hasn't been invented. So even if you tell people, no one's gonna believe you.
Yeah.
That's true, you're just really a crazy guy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they know about the criminal organization, so they can tell the cops where Jeff Daniels is located.
Okay.
And
That's true.
It
they,
seems
they,
like there
they have
aren't
more
any
reason.
cops at all.
That's
Yeah,
true. You
seriously.
never even see a police siren.
There's a scene in the beginning where some guy like tries to rob some guy, and he just like a robber tries and fails and runs away, and the guy like just pulls out a gun and shoots him,
Yeah.
just murders him on the street.
Kansas City's the new Detroit in the future. There's just no
Yeah, no.
lawlessness.
So that was kind of a question I had. You want to talk about how old Joe's mind works. Right?
Well, I mean, yeah, we kind of touched on it. It's like he can see his timeline, his original timeline, the new timeline that's being formed. He can see new memories that I thought that was very cool. I actually think it's the coolest thing of the entire film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a
Because it makes sense.
yeah, it's almost like a string cheese where like at one end is young Joe, at the other end is old Joe, and as things change, it's being peeled slowly, and like it's getting closer to separating from old Joe's like mind of remembering his wife. And
I like that. Yeah.
String cheese.
I like
String
that.
cheese.
That's an interesting way. I like that.
Yeah. Did you notice that they put an alarmingly amount of makeup for this scene when Joseph Gordon-Levitt sees Bruce Willis for the first time? Like the scene before that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks more normal, like himself, and then the next scene, there's like a close-up of his face, and he has so much more makeup on
Yeah.
that I was like shocking to me. I didn't like that. Like we know, we get it. You're not the same.
Like we don't
person.
have to. They don't have to look exactly the same.
let
Like
it
our
go.
movie,
Yeah.
suspension of disbelief has been forever. Like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's like one of my favorites. Even though it's not a time travel movie, though, we are going to talk about time travel in this franchise. It's like the final shot of the Harry Potter crew with that like makeup job that was so weird that they had to
Yeah.
like fade out really quick. Like, don't look at them too hard.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like pretty much the same thing happens with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, don't look too hard.
Yeah.
Like, all right, they're older. You get it?
One last thing that I want to talk about was the comparisons of Joe versus Sid, the little boy. Because there were, once he was on the farm, you did kind of see they clearly connected and like shared some sort of a bond, but we see we see Sid kill the guy, and then he has blood all over his face, and he like runs away, which is also at the same time that old Joe kills all those people, and then there's also a close-up of him with blood all over his face.
Right.
Stuff like that. I really enjoyed kind of seeing that comparison, although I think it would have been better if Joe also had telekinesis or something. There wasn't enough of like similarities, they just like had stuff in common. But I
Right.
think it would have been strong if young Joe saw some of himself in this kid, or
Right.
in some way. Maybe not necessarily if he was TK, but in some way, I think I would have liked that better. I would have had a little bit more sympathy.
Yeah.
Joe would have had more sympathy, I think, to want to save them, not just because he happened to be there with them for a couple days.
Yeah, they tease the concept, but then they're like, no, you got to just go to let it bone Emily Blunt, so we have to
Yeah.
abandon this plot point.
Yeah.
Sure. Did you guys have any other notes you wanted
That's
to
pretty
hit
much
on?
it, you know.
I always loved the line from the movie where where Jeff Bridges talking, he was like,
Jeff Daniels.
I always say Jeff Bridges.
I know,
Jeff
it's,
Daniels.
I know,
Jeff
yeah.
Bridges.
Me too.
And Jeff Daniels is like, blah, 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 and he's like, I think I'm going to go here. He's like, go to China. I'm from the future.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I wrote
Yeah.
that down.
But he still was like, nah, I'm gonna go to France. He's like, dude.
But then we see that Bruce Willis
that
actually
he
did go to
does
China,
go to China.
He does
yeah.
go to China.
and like they did in French. So it was a fun little, you know.
But that conversation maybe didn't happen
Right.
in the original timeline because that conversation happened because Joe had Paul Dano in his basement because the Rainmaker was closing loops.
True. But if my theory that, like, it takes a lot to change the timeline, there was probably some way, even though it didn't happen exactly that way, there was some sort of
That they
conversation
had
where
that, yeah.
Daniel says, you should go to China.
True. I almost wish that Jeff Daniels would have killed Kid Blue. I think that would have been a little bit more symbolic.
That would have been.
Then it was so absolutely unnecessary for him to still be alive. Oh, that's what I had an issue with the bullets, was how many times he got shot, this Kid Blue,
Right.
and was perfectly fine,
Yeah, he got
and
shot in
like
the foot.
chased him. But it wasn't just in the foot. He
Right.
was shot more than once in different places, and he was still perfectly fine, got up. But like, you know, so many other people, they were just shot once somewhere by Bruce Willis, and they're all dead.
They're all
You know
dead.
what I mean? Like, just so that he could chase them and then dies 5 seconds later was so unnecessary to me.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't need to be there. He could have died. It would have been fine. No one really cares. And
But motorbike fight.
I mean, in the service, they had some lines about like, oh, you have a pistol and I have a blunderbuss. Like yours is only get up close, but if you just fire, they all die. But mine can get far away. That was the only
yeah.
moment they're shooting. He was like, he created the dust and then just blindly shot up and killed him. That
which
was the only.
is when you
yeah.
had your issue because he just kept firing over and over again
Right.
and didn't
It's a
reload.
It's a cool scene. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, that was a really cool scene. But it does bring up an accuracy of how the weapon works.
Yeah.
It's just like masturbatory.
Which I wouldn't care if they hadn't made such a point to show us how it actually worked.
Right. I mean, why couldn't just Bruce Willis throw the silver at Joseph Gordon-Levitt and he just drops the gun? Like, that
Yeah,
would have
or just-
worked. Or damages the gun so much he can't fire.
Anything could have turned his head so that Bruce Willis or whoever it is that gets away could have gotten away.
Hit him in the gut. He'll lurch over. Like, I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, it was unnecessary.
Plus, if he can only do it that close, why is he so far away from Bruce Willis when he comes in? Like, I mean, it just... All that just... It's like, wow, what a cool scene, but it doesn't make sense
Yeah,
in the story.
yeah, it really doesn't. Okay, so the Rotten Tomatoes rating, before we get into
really
our
high.
ratings, is really high. 93%, which...
Though 82% of audiences liked it.
Yeah, but to me it's also like it's the percentage of fresh versus rotten ratings. That doesn't mean that every single fresh rating is 100%.
Yeah, it says the
That's
average,
true.
the average rating is 8.1, it says,
Yeah,
which is more
That's-
realistic.
Yeah, that is more realistic. That's my problem with Rotten Tomatoes is that it's either you like it or you don't like it. And I think all of us would say if it's one or the other that we would like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like it. Which, speaking of which, on Twitter, we had a poll of did you like the movie Looper? And the options were yes, no, middle of the road, or I didn't see it. And yes won by 50%. 0% said no, 13% said middle of the road, and 37% said they didn't see it. So yeah, I mean, that's reasonable, but
Yeah.
that's my problem
Yeah,
with
that's-
Rotten
that's a
Tomatoes.
very good
There's
point.
no balance of like the percentage of the actual review. It's either this review is good, this review is bad. That's it.
It's true. When I originally reviewed this on my old website, I gave it an 80 out of 100. And it was me lamenting the script, but loving the visuals, liking the acting performances, and thinking
Yeah.
that the direction was very solid.
Yeah.
And I did like the editing. I thought like there was some really cool editing done in that movie. But, it's one of those films where like it's more style than substance.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just like, it's definitely worth a watch. Like, if for some reason you listen to this podcast and you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching.
It's worth watching at least once.
Yeah, the first time watching it is good, and just don't analyze it, and just watch it and enjoy it, and you'll like it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we had to analyze it, so we kind of picked out these things that weren't so obvious the first time through.
Yeah, definitely some issues. The critics' consensus is as thought-provoking as it is thrilling. Looper delivers an uncommonly smart, bravely original blend of futuristic sci-fi and good old-fashioned action. Yeah, but they also don't talk about the fact that halfway through the movie it gets really boring and no one wants to see Joseph Gordon-Levitt sleep in a barn for half an hour.
Right.
So, yeah. Did we talk about the scientific accuracy.
Yeah, the wormhole thing.
Yeah, the wormholes and
I can get into
obviously
it more,
it's-
but essentially,
yeah.
I mean, obviously impossible, but
Yeah.
you know,
and
movie logic.
obviously the time travel is relevant to the story in the sense of this is Bruce Willis being sent back to the
Right.
past is what causes all this chains of events.
Now, would you guys want to experience this type of time travel?
Experience it in the sense of you are Joe and your future self is sent back and you're supposed to kill them and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, that doesn't when you say it like that. Well, when you put it like that.
Well, I'm just, because when we talk, like,
Yeah,
the time travel of, sure, anyone can come back 30 years is different than, are you
illegally
Joe?
come back 30 years.
Yeah,
The only
are
way-
you Joe?
the only way you travel back to the past is if you're gonna die.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say no, I would not want to.
I would not want to have to kill myself and then
Plus,
let me
I'm
escape
good.
and then still have to try and kill myself and then older me kills children.
Right.
No, thank you.
and this future is pretty crappy too.
It's a bleak 2044.
Man, RoboCop has like more optimism than this does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing like mediocre telekinesis isn't enough for me to like want to ever be in either of these. I mean, 2074 actually seemed a little bit better.
Yeah,
Maybe because he was in China.
That's insane. Like,
But-
particularly in China.
Yeah.
Side note: this movie, Shanghai, Shanghai or like Chinese company helped fund the movie, so that's one of
okay.
the reasons
That's
they
cool.
go
That's-
they go
yeah.
to China.
That's
And
pretty common
actually,
these days.
yeah, in the Chinese version of the film, the Chinese sequence is extended.
I do remember there was a very cool Chinese poster for this movie that I liked a lot.
Yeah.
Would you want to experience time travel?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Did you notice any clothes or anything like that that were different? It seemed kind of generic.
All the cars are very old.
Yeah. There's a lot of
there's-
Ford, I noticed. A lot of Ford.
Well, they are in Kansas City, so
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I mean, it's very noir inspired with like a futuristic, like
Yeah.
hinting, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, final reviews, unless anyone has anything else they forgot to mention? No? Okay. Final reviews, movie rating, we'll start with Matt.
So the first time I saw this movie, I was surprised by it. I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, okay, action movie with time travel and stuff. I probably would have given it an 8 at first,
Mhm.
but watching it again, I realized that it is pretty slow and it has problems. So I'm probably going to give it between a 5 and a 6. I would say
Okay.
closer to a 6, but not quite there.
So, yeah, I would give this movie a 7 out of 10. I think it's still strong in a lot of ways. The directing, as we talked about, was pretty strong, and I, as I've mentioned many times before, I love duplication. So him and older him being in the same place, and that's kind of what the story, in the first part, revolves around. I really enjoyed, so it gets points for that. But yeah, 7 out of 10 to me feels high enough that it's a decent movie worth seeing at least once, but knocked a few points because there's a lot of problems.
Yeah, like I said, when I first rated this movie, I basically give it an 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And watching it again, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, just because as good as the movie is, there's no excuse that the script should have been this undercooked. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like script is one of the few things that really shouldn't be undercooked. I've seen scripts that are overcooked, but undercooked is like a really big sin, I feel.
Yeah.
So I give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. What about time travel rating?
Yeah, I mean, the more we talked about it, the more plot holes I realized with the whole once Joseph Gordon-Levitt kills himself, it should reset everything.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's a scientific impossibility about what I presume to be wormholes, but it could just be like a time teleporter, which is even more impossible.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I liked the world. I liked the way they explained it. I thought seeing the visuals of them kind of dismembering the guy in the past and his future self, it was really cool, really well done. The concept of Bruce Willis's mind changing as things happen, I thought was pretty cool. So it's interesting, but the points are being docked off. So it'll probably be a 6. I'll go with 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with you about the stuff you liked. I like that when Paul Dano's older self, his fingers kept getting cut off, but
Right.
he doesn't feel the pain; they're just gone.
Right.
He
it's gone.
he just notices that it's not there, which I think is kind of cool. And writing the notes on his arm obviously is interesting, but there's a lot of plot holes. I would have rather have seen, more of the original timeline. What caused the Rainmaker to do this,
Mhm.
and why he chose the name the Rainmaker, because he kills people and their blood rains
makes
down.
it- he
Maybe
makes it
I don't
rain.
know.
Yeah,
he makes it rain blood, I guess.
Makes it
I
rain
mean, I know
on
it's like
these.
her like tool thing that she uses in the fields. She like that's her
Oh,
to
yeah.
water her plants, but
Oh, I didn't even notice
her
that.
crops, yeah. But other than that, and what I mean, stuff we've talked about, but I would have rather have gotten a better grasp of the difference between the original timeline and then this changed timeline, and more about the Rainmaker himself, because I think that would have been a more interesting story than Joseph Gordon-Levitt sleeping with hookers. So I give it I didn't
A
give it
hooker.
a number. A hooker
A
multiple
hooker
times.
from White Collar. I mean,
And
not White
a-
Collar.
and a farmer.
Covert Affairs.
Yeah,
Piper
which I
Perabo.
love Piper Perabo, but yeah. So 5 out of 10 feels reasonable.
I'm gonna give it a 6.5 out of 10. With the time travel, there's some interesting things, and like you said, my favorite part of the movie is the whole Bruce Willis's mind picking up on things. I thought that's something that's not really done really in movies with time travel, and I like that they did that. So kudos to them for on that. It just doesn't make sense when you really lay it out. But when I watched it, I didn't feel like, man, this timeline makes no sense.
Right. It's
Like,
not glaringly bad.
right.
Yeah.
It's just like the time travel stuff moves along fast enough that you never notice that there's a lot of
But they
problems
don't
with it.
get enough into the actual time travel, how it was invented, where it was invented. Like, obviously the mob uses it, but that, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there wasn't enough of like,
Yeah.
this is time travel. It's just
It's-
time travel's there. And
It was
it's
invented
fine.
and then it was outlawed. That's-
Yeah, I
Things
just
in the outlawed, like
I
the
don't
police
like
came
that.
and like, we're shutting it down.
It's like
Yeah.
an oven. It's like you just jump in a hole and there's like an oven lights that heat up around
It's
you and then it
very-
shakes and then
Yeah.
you're there.
It's very similar to Deja Vu.
Yeah.
Very, very similar.
Yes.
Sorry, were you finished?
No, I'm done.
Okay, so social media stuff. We are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and on Instagram. Please follow us. We love to hear from you.
Yeah, we check it, we read it, and we
Mhm.
try to get back to you.
Yeah, and we're also on Facebook at the Time Travel Trio podcast. So also rate and subscribe us on iTunes. We're also on SoundCloud and Stitcher. So there's lots of ways to listen to us if you're anti-iTunes. And there is a SoundCloud app as well. So if you have apps on your phone but you don't want the iTunes app, there is that one as well. So there's options for you. And personal Matt.
I am at Foreman in Space, Forman.
I am at Jen Marlis on Twitter and Instagram.
I'm at Robinson is Hyde on Twitter and Instagram.
Cool. So I'm very excited to announce that our next movie is going to be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This is my choice, and I am a huge Harry Potter person, so don't worry, listeners. It's not a bunch of assholes talking about Harry Potter that don't know what they're talking about. I'm very, very, very well versed.
Just one asshole who doesn't know what he's talking
Just
about.
one asshole named Matt. But that's okay. But, like,
From
there's
a
some...
gaggle of assholes, it's just one.
Right.
if it was all of us going through this movie and not really knowing enough about Harry Potter to get into it, that would be obnoxious. But
Yeah.
I'm saying, don't worry. I recently reread the book even before we're going to do this movie. So I'm prepared in all ways, shapes, and forms. The third one is my favorite, not just because it's time travel, but also because it's time travel, but is my favorite out of all the Potter movies. Not necessarily my favorite book, but it's my favorite movie for sure. It's very dark. It doesn't feel like if you feel like, oh, Harry Potter, it's really campy and light and whatever, but the third one is very different.
Yeah.
Alfonso Cuarón did this. He did Y Tu Mamá También, and it's really, really, really well done. I really love this movie a lot. I haven't seen it in a little while, but I'm a big Potterhead, and I'm really excited to talk about the time travel in this movie because I think it's a really... It's duplication, which I love. I didn't even know how much I love duplication, but I really do. It's duplication, and it's an interesting take. Obviously, magic is a lot more involved, so there's less science, but which is maybe why you're an asshole. But there you go.
I mean, hey,
but
I'm a movie fan first and foremost, so I can
I'm
look
just
past.
teasing
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and I've never seen this movie actually, so I'm excited
Cool.
to see it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it helps a little bit, but the first two Harry Potter movies are very light. They very much stick to the books. The first two were done by Chris Columbus, so who's a good director, but they don't
They're for
stray too
kids.
far. They're very like family oriented. This one, while still being family oriented, really is like Harry Potter's growing up, and he's not just some little famous kid.
Right.
You know, he has to go through a lot of shit, and you really kind of have to deal with it this time. You have to deal with it more with him, which I really, really enjoy. And it's dark, and it's dark.
Yeah, I'm
I
excited.
can't wait. But anyway, the synopsis is: it's Harry's third year at Hogwarts. Not only does he have a new defense against the dark arts teacher, but there is also trouble brewing, as always. Convicted murderer Sirius Black has escaped the wizard's prison and is coming after Harry. So obviously, J.K. Rowling wrote the novel. Steve Kloves wrote the screenplay. Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter. Emma Watson is Hermione. And Rupert Grint is Ron Weasley. So, brush up on your Potter or don't. But this movie is great. If you know the basic premise of Harry Potter, he's a boy wizard who is famous for when he was a baby, his mother sacrificed herself so that he could live, and her love saved him from the killing curse from the evil Lord Voldemort. And you're laughing because
we know you love Harry Potter.
no, but I'm saying like people who might not know. I'm
Okay.
just giving a general.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Harry Potter.
But anyway,
the boy
yeah,
who
so
lived.
it's a magic thing. It's wizards and whatever. I mean, not everyone knows Harry Potter.
I know, but this is Looper.
Yeah, okay, but like, I want people to. I
I'm just
understand.
giving you a hard time.
Literally, you're being an asshole. Like,
See, it's begun.
I'm just trying to give people incentive to want to watch the third one because the third one's very good.
Okay.
I'm
Don't feel like you
looking
need
forward to
to-
recording
My
the episode.
point before you interrupted me was that you don't feel like you need to watch the first two first,
Okay,
but just know the premise.
gotcha.
So, yeah. I didn't finish, but anyway, I guess I will have to stop. So,
Well, I think we are
Out of time.
sure.